As Ed introduced me, I'm a one-name person, like Cher, Madonna. I'm Daria. And this morning, as he said, I would like to share with you the Ernst Young journey and what we're doing to make our work environment a more exciting and especially functional for our younger staff. And you'll hear some common themes that we heard from John and Victor, but I think with a little bit of a different perspective and filter. Part of it is because, or a big reason of it is because our physical space is so deeply rooted in our culture. And we've a company that's been around for a long time. And to give you really a sense of this, I want to take you back in time and share with you our journey, our evolution, and how we got to where we are today. But first, I need to give you a little bit of insight. You know, who is Ernst Young? How do we work? What are we all about? We are a professional services firm. Our people work on project teams, rarely individual contributors, project teams of all different sizes. They're oftentimes working out at client locations, not in an Ernst Young internal office, and they often are working on more than one project at any given time. Our teams are very mobile. They work oftentimes in shared office space, like a conference room. And in most days, back to some of the stats that Victor shared with you, less than 50% of our employees are actually in an Ernst Young office. Why? Because they're working someplace else. So you can see we don't need a designated seat for every person on our head count. After compensation, our next largest expense is real estate. We need to move, we saw that, from managing our real estate from purely a cost basis, but really using it as a tool to increase the engagement and the flexibility for our talented employees, and to promote that flexibility. That's where the millennials are taking us. They're pushing us there. And right now at Ernst Young, about 65% of our workforce are millennials. It's a large percentage. When I started with the firm in 1978, about 35 years ago, yeah, it's been a while, offices were very much a status symbol. They signified what your rank was with the firm. Partners had their own offices, had their own office furniture they got to select. Everything was fixed-walled, and office managing partners had these huge corner offices. In the mid-'80s, we started to get a little bit more, thoughtful and move the staff into open space cubicles, because that was the trend. And we allowed some of our managers, when they got to be promoted to as a manager, that was a big perk of that promotion, because they got to go from a cube into a fixed-walled space. In 1990, as you can see here on the slide, our U.S., this is just our U.S. headcount, was about 22,000 employees. In the 2000s, or I should say the mid-90s, we really tried to dip our toe into hoteling space. We could see that real estate costs getting larger and larger for us, and so we decided to try hoteling in some locations. And by hoteling, I mean you shared your office with a couple of other people. You still had a designated space, but you just had to share it with somebody. And the horror stories, the rumors were just rampant. There was this one story in our Chicago office, Ed, where one of the partners had a very special silver tea set and lots of personal photos. And whenever he was going to be in the office, his administrative assistant had to make sure that she got in before him and got everything set up just the way he liked it before he entered. Otherwise, he would be put in a bad mood. And that seemed kind of silly, pretty inefficient. And so, as you can guess, our hoteling experiment died a pretty quick death. So we still needed to address our rising costs of our office space. And what we did to address that was we moved to standard office sizes, away from custom, more to standard. All the soft office sizes were identified by rank, and they kept getting smaller and smaller. We moved also to standard furniture. And the office managing partner's office was no longer a big corner office. Those corner offices were now replaced with conference rooms, and the office managing partner's office was the same size as any other partner in that office. So our EY world was flattening, but the hierarchy was still living strong. So where are we now, the workplace of the future today? We're about 31,000 employees in the US, with 160,000 globally. Our real estate costs continue to increase, but we figured we saw what was heading at us and we needed to do something bolder. We were still approaching this, however, from a pure cost play, but along the way, something really cool happened. Our teams evolved with this huge influx of our millennials. They are pushing us. They opened our eyes to what is possible, given how they wanted to work, their mobility needs and their flexibility needs, all with a desired increase in using technology to allow them to do things differently. When they're in the office, they were often camped out in conference rooms. Our cubicles sat empty. And it was hard to get, if you needed to hold a meeting, it was hard to find conference room space. They didn't, and they don't want to be tethered to an office. They want to be connected wirelessly, free to move about the building to get their work done in the way that they need to get it done, and to team better. In other words, they're pushing us, as I said before, pushing us to think differently about how they work, where they work, and when they work at an ever-increasing pace. And to give you another idea of how strong this millennial influence is on our culture, this year, in 2014, because 13 is just about over with, in 2014, we will hire, in the U.S. only, about 4,000 new hires off campus and another 3,000 of interns. And that number repeats and grows every year. So this will sound a little bit familiar with Victor, but we had a convergence of things going on. We have real estate costs that we're focusing on. We've got technology that's enabling us to do things differently. At the same time, we have our people pushing us to think about doing it differently and thinking about using our office space as a tool and not an entitlement. But our culture is still steeped in hierarchy, so our change management is huge. There are things that we still do to reinforce that status and that rank that we have to stop doing. Things like giving away stuff and trinkets from meetings to show what your accomplishments are, or what your status is. I bet you do some of the same things at your companies. We need to learn how to tell our story, not show them. We need to get our baby boomers, and actually even some Gen Xers, with it when it comes to flexibility. That's another big root in our culture. If you're not seen doing the work, you're probably not working. So back to the jammies, if you're a teleworker, there are a lot of jokes that go around about jammies and having an easier life. So we need to get more comfortable with accepting people in a virtual world. And we need to get used to planning our days ahead in advance, because if you need to be in the office and you want a place to sit, you need to make a reservation. And this is my favorite. We need to learn how to be considerate of others, not leaving a mess in a shared space for somebody else to move in behind you. It's crazy, and you may laugh at me. I think it's hard. It's hard. We don't tend to be very considerate, and we tend to be pretty messy. So I moved ahead a slide. That's the history, where we are today. I'd like to now take you through a little bit of a tour of our new space in San Francisco that Ed had the pleasure to take a look at last year when we finished the build-out. It's been just about a year that it's been online. And right now, as we're just work with me here, we're walking off the elevator and walking into our internet cafe. This is a multi-purpose room. You can work, you can eat, you can have a cup of coffee, you can socialize, you can actually catch up on the news if you want to watch the news on our plasma screens that we have in the location. Take a look at that back wall there. I'll take a closer look now. That is filled with words. Those words are our purpose, our mission, our value statements, and our aspirations. And that is really bold for us. That is something that we have never done before. Previously, our value statement would be sitting on a brochure that you probably only got when you in orientation, and it was rarely after that seen or read. This keeps it front of mind, which I think is a real difference maker for us. And here we've got another view in our internet cafe. And what I like about this one to point out is we see a young woman who is really, from my perspective, deep in thought, trying to get some work done. There's a lot of stuff going on around her. There's other people in there. There's a TV going. But she's able to concentrate. That's a skill that I, as a boomer, don't have, but our millennials do. And this is another shot of some of the furniture that we have in our internet cafe. Again, it's a pretty big space, and these are what we call our tower chairs. You can actually sit in these chairs. Two people can sit and have a private conversation in a very open arena and still be confidential, not be overheard. And this is one of the things I love, these tables. They're really cool. It's like going to the restaurant where you get handed a pack of crayons and there's a paper tablecloth, and you get to doodle while you're waiting for your cocktails or sketch something out, or maybe you've got kids with you and you can make a total mess of it. But these are even greener because we can clean them off and reuse them. Now we're out of the cafe and we're just into some of our regular space. But I wanted to share this picture with you because you can see some of the things that we're doing with our furniture that's more informal and more comfortable, but still allows for in a collaborative setting, more like a living room type of setting. I find that a lot more comfortable than sitting at a traditional desktop or desk and chair setup. This one actually is kind of hard to see from this picture, but this is actually a smart board where you can electronically display what you're working on in a collaborative arrangement. And most of our conference rooms are equipped with these smart boards now. And it's really, I think, a cool way to do work as a team on a large setting. And I think it's a lot more effective than an overhead projector, and I think you'd agree with that. The other thing is we still do have traditional offices and conference rooms if you need that kind of traditional space. At the entrance of each room, there's a smart pad that you swipe your ID badge, you plug in what time you need to have the space, and the space is yours if it's available. And if you're a staff person, you can reserve a partner-size office, which is kind of unheard of before. This is a picture of what we call our plug-and-play space. And this is really meant to be, it's a room that will sit about 12 people. And it's really meant to be where you just need to have some time to plug in, get some work done, and you're working solo. Not necessarily to be in a team environment. And it's kind of an unwritten rule when you're in these rooms that you keep it quiet. It's not meant to be a teaming environment. It's meant to be, as I said, an individual space, but in a, sharing it with others. And you'll notice that we've got some hardware on the tabletop there with some phones. And when we do our next build out, those are going to disappear and we're going to be moving to soft phones. And this one, one of the things we need to do is we need to be respectful of people's work style. As a baby boomer and a lot of my colleagues, we see these young kids with their earphones, headphones on, earbuds in, and it drives us absolutely crazy. We think that they don't want to talk to us. We think that they're not listening to us. But, it's just a way for them to be able to stay focused and do what they need to do. It doesn't mean that they're setting up an artificial barrier to us. So we just need to get over it. And if you do need to have a confidential conversation, make a phone call, for work or personal, you can just step into a JIT. That's our shorthand for just-in-time space. And these are small sitting areas, and you'll see at the top there the 30-minute parking sign. Love those signs, but that's the rule. You can only stay in the JIT for 30 minutes. And last but not least, we're still going to let people have stuff. Each person has an assigned storage area where they can keep items secured in the office, and it's theirs. And so they can still have their stuff, not a whole lot of it, and it just won't be on display. Not in our new culture. Again, we need to learn how to tell our stories and connect that way instead of just showing who we are. So that's the end of the virtual tour, and I'd like to leave you with a thought. The floor that I just showed you, that's not the way our entire San Francisco office is built out. Unfortunately, we still have some floors that are not yet updated. I, unfortunately, sit on one of the older floors. And I'll tell you that when I go on to the floors that are built out and then go back to my space, it can actually get kind of depressing. So the thought that I leave you with is the dynamics of your workforce. So you heard different stories about Facebook and Medtronic. At Ernst Young, it's different. We all have different our workforce dynamics. But I ask you to think about, in your own situations, does your workplace create energy for your people, or does it suck the life out of them? And I would suggest that perhaps now you go back and think about, how your workspace is working for you, and think about it with a different perspective. Thank you.